Chapter 16. Release the Hounds. Kakashi was pleased as he stared down at the exhausted forms of his little genin. Everyone was panting, and Sasuke especially had some nasty bruises forming. The boys were certainly coming along. In a day or two, he was certain that they would have the tree walking exercise mastered. Given her astounding control, he was sure Hinata would have water walking down around the same time. Hinata was draped in Kakashi's flak jacket and shivering due to the water clinging to her form. While it wouldn't cover her arms, it would certainly warm her back and chest. The Leaf Village's specialized flak jackets were designed for use in every environment. They were light enough for use in the deserts of the wind, and they had heating pads activated by chakra for the cold for the harsh winters of the Iron Country. Now, I'm pleased with your efforts for day 1. In the morning, we'll start with another spar before practicing what we learned today. We'll go over the full details of your arraignment tomorrow. I expect you all on time, or the punishment will be severe. All three shuddered as their injuries from this morning served as a painful reminder of how harsh Kakashi could be. Hinata, just bring the jacket with you tomorrow morning, and remember to bring a towel. You guys are dismissed. With that, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. When he was sure the man was gone, Naruto scrunched his face. I bet he thinks he's so cool when he does that, Baka-sensei. The three groaned as they started to shuffle their way back towards the village. Sasuke winced with every step he took. He wanted to complain, but this is what he wanted. His sensei was finally getting serious about their training. However, he thought as he rubbed his nose, I just wish he could be a little gentler about it. As Naruto started to whine to Hinata about Kakashi's supported favoritism, Sasuke's thoughts returned to the question that had hounded him as he tried again and again to climb up the tree. What did he like to do? What put him at ease? As he made it clear in his introduction, Sasuke didn't like many things. He never really interacted with his fellow classmates when he had been at the academy, and he didn't really have any hobbies. If he sat around, he would end up thinking about his family. If he tired himself out training, he only delayed the inevitable. He clenched his fist and scowled. Even after 5 years, his brother was still controlling his life. Hinata had noticed Sasuke's change in temperament as the west entrance to the village came into view. She reached out and tugged at his arm, forcing him to look at her. Are you alright? Fine. He muttered as he tried to remove his arm from her grasp, but she wouldn't let go. Please tell me what's wrong, she pleaded. I said I'm fine. He yanked his arm from her grasp, and without another word, he started heading off towards his apartment. Naruto crossed his arms and stared at Sasuke's retreating form. Stupid jerk. That was rude. Why does he always have to act like something crawled up his ass? I'm sorry, Hinata. You didn't deserve that. She was silent and rubbed her fingers. It's alright. I'm still worried something is bothering him. She sighed as she stared off in the direction he had left. Naruto was silent as he reflected on his conversation with Kenta. He was reminded how little he actually knew about Sasuke. He had let his pride prevent him from reaching out to him for years. Maybe it was time that he finally did something. I think we should have a talk with him, Hinata said. I'm open to it, but I don't think he's going to open up without some resistance. He's as thick-headed as I am. She lightly chuckled at this attempt to cheer her up, as she reached out and lightly tapped his head with her knuckle. You certainly are that. You two can both be so silly. Naruto chuckled as he rubbed his head. Okay, if we run into him before training, we'll try to talk to him then. Sound good? Yeah, that sounds good. Great. Now, let's get you home before you catch a cold. Can't have the village's greatest mednet in training falling sick on me. As it turned out, they didn't run into Sasuke the next morning. In fact, he didn't arrive until a minute before Kakashi appeared. Hinata was quick to return his neatly folded and washed flak jacket. Thank you, Hinata. He smiled as he threw on the jacket. Alright, now gather round and listen up. They were hesitant. Apparently their lesson from yesterday was still fresh in their mind. Good. You're not gonna sucker punch me again, are you? Naruto asked. Only if you let me. Kakashi replied with a smile. It was a cheap shot. There are no cheap shots in our line of work. Now circle up and listen. Here's how things are going to work. Every morning, we will begin with a taijutsu spar similar to the one you had yesterday. You'll have to work together to fend me off for 30 minutes using every trick in your arsenal. This will force you to come up with new tactics every day. You did well yesterday, but you're going to have to keep up that momentum. After that, we will take a 20-minute breather. I'd advise skipping breakfast and eating during this period instead. When that is done, we will move on to individual lessons where I will take time with each of you. Everyone's eyes lit up at that prospect. However, we will not begin this until all of you have mastered the water walking exercise. Think of it as a little extra incentive to work harder. After a few hours, we will begin group conditioning, which I'm certain you will enjoy. His pleasant voice sent shivers down their spines. After that, we'll break again for food and return an hour later. You can go to the village if you want, but anyone who is late will lose their personal time the next day, and instead use their time doing what we in Anbu called suicide sets. Trust me, they are quite unpleasant. The color drained from their faces as each of them understood the gravity of such punishment. All hopes of sneaking off to Ichiraku were dashed out of Naruto's mind. Kakashi continued, "After the meal, we will have one-on-one spars before calling it a night. This schedule can change in any way I see fit, but this is the base form we will follow. We will meet every day except Sunday, which will be used to relax. Any strenuous activity is forbidden. The amount of effort your muscles will be going through will require a day to release and heal. And if I find out you ignored my warnings, looking at you boys, that just means I'm not working you hard enough. Am I understood?" The group nodded in unison and he smiled. "Good. Any questions?" A unison headshake was his response. "Very well. By the way, Sasuke, how's your face feeling?" "Better. No thanks to you." He grumbled as he rubbed his nose. "Really?" He smiled before he swung an uppercut straight to his chin, sending him flying back. "I'll have to fix that." Sasuke slammed into the ground and felt as if his body had been paralyzed. He couldn't move. Naruto and Hinata jumped back and took positions in front of their fallen teammate. Their legs were shaking as Kakashi slowly walked towards them, cracking his knuckles. Team Tactics Lesson 32, Protecting an Injured Comrade. Let's begin. 20 peaceful minutes later, a black blur paused and stared out over the field. He had been heading west anyway, but Kitsune took a minute to watch as Kakashi beat into his new team. Kakashi was described by his peers as cold and reserved, so it always shocked them whenever he made a snide remark to infuriate the blonde blur that would race into the Hokage's office from time to time. He let out a dark chuckle as Kakashi ripped through a line of clones and nailed the blonde in the gut. Maybe he really was the sadist his fellow Anbu members said he was. As Kakashi held off Sasuke, who had recovered by this point, he noticed their silent observer in the trees. He quickly grabbed Sasuke's leg mid-swing and Naruto's face, who had been creeping up behind him, and launched them at their third teammate, who was still recovering from a nasty blow to the side. He used the distraction of their collision to start signing to his longtime Anbu subordinate. Kitsune responded to his greetings and signed to him, "Graveyard Mission." Kakashi signed back, "Good hunting," before returning his attention to his three students who were starting to get back up. Naruto growled as he and his teammates stared daggers at the Jonin. Kitsune chuckled one last time before he continued on his path out of the village. He had been assigned another graveyard mission, and every second counted. Anbu had dubbed this moniker to missions that were considered dormant or dead. Due to a lack of evidence, some missions were never solved and remained open for years. However, sometimes, the Hokage saw fit to take another crack at these cases by diverting some of his finest agents to take a look at the case from another perspective. His current mission regarded a 3-year-old case many had given up on and considered unfortunate circumstance. While his expertise mainly lay in combat, he was also one of the Anbu's leading investigators and forensic specialists. Due to his special skills in tracking and fierce determination, the Hokage went out of his way to send his loyal hellhound on what many considered unsolvable cases. He hadn't disappointed him yet. He had been assigned 8 graveyard cases over the 14 years he had served in Anbu. Some took him only months, others took years. They were a heavy commitment, but he would always take the time to ensure each case had a resolution. This one would be no different. He continued his silent journey as he raced off towards the boundaries of Fire and Rain Country. Hours later, Sasuke and Naruto raced up the trees once again and again, slowly improving on their previous records. Hinata was out on the man-made pond, taking careful steps over the water. To avoid the same problems as yesterday, she had been sure to bring a bathing suit with her this time. Nothing fancy, just a modest one piece that matched the color of her hair. Her clothes and a towel were neatly folded off to the side. Kakashi glanced at his watch. They were making good time. Thanks to her advice the previous day, the boys were really making steady progress. It surprised him that Naruto seemed to find his center of peace easier than Sasuke. Then again, the boy had always been an oxymoron, loud and impulsive, yet breezed through the most difficult shinobi art like copy paper. He chalked it up to his Uzumaki heritage. He counted down the last seconds before he called out for them to stop. He was glad this had not drained too much from them. Sasuke was only lightly panting, and Hinata also seemed slightly winded while she dried her hair. Of course, Naruto was still bouncing full of energy. He would have to fix that. Alright, good work team. If you keep at this pace, I expect you boys will have this down by tomorrow. With Hinata's help, I'm sure you'll have water walking down in no time. Hinata blushed at the compliment, and the boys looked excited. Kakashi definitely was impressed. He was especially surprised by Naruto's performance. He had initially been very worried about how he would handle the boys' chakra control. To put it in perspective, his own chakra reserves were like a small lake, but Naruto's were comparable to an ocean. That much built-up chakra had certainly caused him grief during his time at the academy. Studying Fuinjutsu had done wonders for him. While his control was nowhere near his teammates', it was acceptable for now. Now then, after Hinata has changed, we will begin our group conditioning. When he saw them seize up, he said, "Don't worry, it won't be too bad on the first day. Just a simple jog around the village." They each let out a sigh, and Kakashi had a hard time stopping himself from chuckling. Oh, they have no idea. Throwing around ninjutsu, and in your case, fuinjutsu, can only get you so far. In some cases, pure taijutsu can be enough to overshadow both of these. It doesn't matter how powerful your jutsu is if you can't hit your opponent. He knew this was a lesson Naruto had already taken to heart, which reminded him of something he had been meaning to bring up to the blonde. Hinata went off to change behind the trees, and Kakashi was about to call Naruto over when the blonde stormed over to the other boy. "You should apologize to Hinata for last night," he said as he glared at him. "What for?" "You were rude to her. She was trying to make sure you were okay. You didn't need to snap at her." "Why don't you mind your own business?" he snapped. "Because my friends are my business. So stop being a jerk and apologize when she gets back." After a moment of silence, he uttered, "Fine." He sighed before continuing. "You're right. I may have snapped at her. I just had a lot on my mind. Do you want to talk about it?" "No." He glared at him. "Why don't you want to talk?" "No!" "Boys, if you're done, I'd like to see you for a moment." Kakashi cut in. They stopped their bickering and walked up to Kakashi. He was glad they were able to work things out without Hinata intervening. They needed to be able to defuse a situation without her presence. Better. Now Naruto, what can you tell me about your so-called lightning rod seals? "How did you hear about that?" "I read about it in your exam reports. I heard about how you stole the show with your performance. Iruka was especially vocal about your performance." Naruto lightly blushed as he excitedly started rambling away about the complexities of drawing the electric field, creating an abundance of protons to attract the electricity, and more technical physics jargon that went way over Sasuke's head. "How hard would it be for you to make more of them?" "They take a bit of time, but they aren't too complicated. I can make some more if you really need them." "I'll admit, your idea seems very useful, especially since my primary affinity is lightning." Naruto's eyes widened as a grin split apart his face. You got it, Sensei! Oh, this is so awesome! I get to show some field tests firsthand! I got to make sure I'm ready for... He continued muttering himself as Sasuke slowly edged towards Kakashi. He leaned in and whispered, "He doesn't consider that complicated?" "I was just as lost as you were," Kakashi whispered back. Something clicked in his head and Sasuke asked, "How does one find out their chakra affinity?" Now, we'll get to that in due time. The test itself is extremely simple and barely takes a second, but it's not time to start elemental training. Actually, Kakashi-sensei, I was curious too, Naruto butted in. Why does your chakra affinity matter anyway? Gigi can throw around any element he wants. Well, your chakra affinity doesn't really limit the type of jutsu you can perform, but it does affect how strong each can be. You'll find that it's easier to learn and master jutsu of your own chakra nature than with others. Some people prefer to stick with the type that they are strongest with, but I find this foolish. Limiting yourself to one hurts your ability to adapt and allows your opponent to prey on your element's weakness. Now, elemental training is something that we won't deal with until you're Chunin. It mostly involves gaining a better understanding of your element and helping you develop your own jutsu. The boys nodded as Hinata jogged up fully changed. Hinata? She turned to him and was surprised when he refused to make eye contact. He mumbled something under his breath so softly she could barely hear him. What was that, Sasuke? He took a deep breath and looked at her and said, "I'm sorry." She was surprised and opened her mouth to ask a question, but he continued. "I apologize for my behavior last night. I shouldn't have snapped at you. I just had something on my mind." Hinata smiled as she stared at him. She lightly bowed and said, "I appreciate that, Sasuke. I forgive you." Kakashi smiled at his team. Glad everything worked out. Alright, before we begin, there are some people I'd like you to meet. He pulled out a kunai and made a cut along his finger. Hinata gasped, but he pressed on and pulled out a scroll from his jacket. Forming 4 hand signs, he slammed his hand into the ground, eliciting a cloud of white smoke. The smoke cleared to reveal Kakashi in the midst of a group of dogs with blue bandanas. "Team, I'd like you to meet my ninja hounds. They've been very excited to meet you." The dogs raced forward and enveloped Hinata. She giggled as they jumped up to lick her face. She reached down and picked up a small brown pug. "Look at you, you're so cute. You have such lovely straight fur, and your paws, they're so soft." "Thank you, miss. Not many people understand how hard it is to keep my fur this clean, although I would prefer if you didn't call me cute." "I apologize, Inu-san. I will refrain from calling you that in the future." The pug smiled as Hinata enveloped it in another hug. "I didn't know you had a summoning contract," Sasuke said as he reached down for the dogs to sniff his hand. "I don't," Kakashi replied. "They are just linked to a summoning jutsu through the mark on their bandanas. Besides tracking, what else can they do?" Sasuke asked as Shiba rubbed his face into Sasuke's hand. Sasuke had surprisingly always done well with animals. "More than you, cat boy," the pug uttered as it focused its blank look on him. "Now, be nice, Pakun. Team, let me introduce Pakun, Bull, Urushi, Shiba, Biscuit, Akino, Uhe, and Guroko. I've trained them since I was a little older than you. They can speak, are expert trackers, and have saved my hide on more missions than I can count," Kakashi stated proudly. "That's so cool! Hey, little buddy," Naruto said, reaching out before Bull started growling at him. Whoa, what did I do?" he asked as he stepped back. "Bull, was that necessary?" Kakashi chided. "He smells," was all Bull replied. "Hey, what's that supposed to mean?" exploded Naruto. "Maybe he's just calling it as it is," Sasuke butted in. "Shut up! I showered before I came here. We haven't been sweating that badly." "He reeks of fox," Bull said bluntly as he stared into Naruto's eyes. "So, you all already know about summoning." Kakashi cut in before the conversation could head down an uncomfortable direction. Naruto was thankful for the save and started petting the much more approachable Biscuit. Sasuke nodded as he scratched Shiba behind the ears. My clan used to have strong connections with the cats. There was never a formal contact scroll, but we had a strong trade alliance. They would supply weapons for us, and sometimes allow us to summon them in a similar manner you do. My clan also has a summoning scroll, but not many people are allowed to sign it. While they are loyal to the clan, the summons are very picky about who they choose, Hinata piped in. Really? Kakashi was surprised. He had never heard of the Hyuga owning a summoning contract. How long have they had it? How many people in the clan are currently allowed to use the scroll? Or is that too private? No, sir. She seemed to look down and shuffled her feet as she continued. There's only one person allowed to use it. Is it your father? She violently shook her head as a blush started to form. No. That surprised him. The summons were so choosy, they wouldn't even let the hierarch call them. Can you tell me who it is? Her blush darkened as she stuttered. It's me. Really now? Kakashi said, lightly surprised, as the boy stared at her. She gripped Pakun closer to her chest in an attempt to hide her face. Naruto raced up to her and exclaimed, You can summon too? That's so awesome, Hinata! What kind of animal is it? Can you show us? Can you do it right now? What kind of jutsu does it know? Naruto continued to rapid-fire questions at her, and her blush only grew darker and darker. Naruto, please give Hinata some space. I'd rather she didn't use up her chakra attempting the summon when we're about to start your conditioning. There's always later. Hinata sent him a look of thanks as she set Pakun back on the ground. Sasuke was about to speak up when Kakashi loudly whistled and his dogs raced over and sat down alongside him. They were instantly alert as Kakashi raised a fist, and all of the dogs started growling at them. What's going? They are here to help motivate you three today. Guys, whoever catches one of them first gets Angus steak tonight, and an extra serving of peanut butter on the side. The dogs seemed to smile as they menacingly bared their teeth at the genin. You wouldn't really let them harm us, right, Sensei? Naruto attempted the chuckle. I don't know. Do you really want to find out? They'll only stop when I say so. By the way, thank you so much for allowing them to get to your sense earlier. They each paled as they realized they had been duped. I think a 10-second head start is fair enough, Kakashi said, and they each disappeared in a cloud of smoke. I think that's too generous, Kakashi, Pakun said. You're right. 5 should be enough. Sick 'em. Akamaru stopped sniffing at the grass and stared off into the trees. What's up, buddy? Kiba asked. Akamaru started growling and barking towards the woods. Kiba, what's going on? Kurenai asked. Not sure. Something's got him riled up. I don't know what it is. He paused as he sniffed the air. He smelled it too. They all started to hear faint screaming, which was rapidly growing louder and louder. They stared in the direction Akamaru was pointing in as they started to see forms in the woods. What is... Kurenai was cut off as Team 7 burst through the trees, sprinting right towards them. Naruto was leading the pack, screaming his head off as they raced towards them. What was going on? Excuse me, pardon me, coming through, gotta go! Naruto rambled off as he dashed through Team 8. Hinata, what is going on? Sorry, Sensei, no time! Hinata shouted as she and Sasuke raced past them as well. What is going on? Sakura asked as several forms crashed through the tree line. She lost her breath as 8 dogs were charging straight at them. She began to reach for a kunai when they shifted around them and stormed off after Team 7. They all stood there in a daze as they tried to comprehend what they had just seen. What the hell was that? Kiba exclaimed. After a moment of silence, Kurenai softly said, It appears Kakashi is having fun with his students. Team 8 blinked at her as they stared off where Team 7 had be. What kind of sadistic sensei did they have? Naruto led the charge as the three of them sprinted through the streets of the town. They weaved their way through the streets with the pack right on their heels. They jumped over, and in some cases, through caravans and wagons as they made their way through the city. "Right turn now!" Naruto yelled, and the other two followed him without a second thought. Hinata's stomach lurched as she turned into the alley and saw it was a dead end. Naruto raced ahead, slid while turning around, and crossed his fingers together. Sasuke raced past her and planted his feet in the Naruto's hands. He heaved up and sent Sasuke flying into the air. After a few seconds, Sasuke planted his feet against the wall and started running up the side. He started slowing down as he reached the top and jumped just in time to grab hold of the roof's edge. Hinata caught on and raced towards them as she started to hear the barking drawing closer. He catapulted her up and she easily adhered to the wall, making it to the top without a problem. They both stared down at Naruto, who was now facing down the pack, hurtling straight towards him. He crossed his fingers together and 3 clones appeared. The first 2 grabbed a hold of the other's arm and flung them up in the air. The original twisted and kicked off from his clone's feet and propelled himself up the wall. He hit the ground running, and the other 2 caught him when he started to slip near the roof. They took the moment to take a breath and stared down at the dogs below. They tore into the blonde's clones, and he winced as the feeling of their sharp fangs entered his mind. "Whew, at least we'll be safe up here," Naruto sighed. A second later, Shiba and Uhe started racing up the wall towards them. "You had to jinx it, didn't you?" Sasuke growled as they turned to continue their pursuit on the rooftops. It must have been a funny sight, seeing 3 12-year-olds jumping and racing along the rooftops as a horde of dogs chased after them. They pushed more chakra through their legs when they had to bridge large gaps. When they tried to cross the street, Naruto would summon a tower of clones on each other's shoulders, allowing them to get across. "This is getting ridiculous." Sasuke growled as he reached into his pouch for some wire. The pack was temporarily out of sight. They had jumped down to the streets below before heading up the walls to rejoin them on the roofs. "Normally, I'd suggest splitting up, but I don't see how that would do us much good," Naruto panted. "We seem to be doing better working together." He summoned 5 clones, and Sasuke tossed 2 of them his trap. They began setting it up as the other 3 helped propel the team over a slightly large gap. "Here they come," Hinata warned as she watched them with her Byakugan. The dogs raced after them, setting off the tripwire, causing the 2 in the lead to be caught by their legs. The rest of the pack pounced and destroyed the lingering clones before Bull came up and easily snatched the wire. Sasuke cursed that he couldn't use any of his jutsu. They were predominantly fire, and it would be hazardous to discharge them in a civilian environment. Even then, he doubted it would stop them, and it would only drain his energy. "Well, right now, I'm open to suggestions, because we don't seem to be slowing them down that much." Sasuke glanced back. They had been only slightly set back and were easily making up their lost ground. "I may have an idea," Hinata piped in, "but it may leave us in worse condition than before." "I'm all ears." "We could use Naruto's technique to teleport away from them. But even if we hid, they can still track us. It would also leave Naruto extremely sick, which would slow us down tremendously." "I'd never even tried it with someone else before Hinata on our mission. But could you manage it?" Sasuke cut in. Naruto flashed him a look of determination. "If you guys need me to, I'll make it work." "Alright, here's what we'll do." Pakun led the charge as they soared after the team. They had been at this for a couple hours now. Sooner or later, they would start to get tired. His eyes sharpened as the blonde brought his hands together to summon more clones. He was shocked, as around 100 of them burst out of the cloud of smoke. The Ninken were immediately on edge, but were surprised when they all went away from them. They each dashed off into the village in different directions. "Are we sure they didn't switch with a clone?" Akino asked. Pakun sniffed the air and stared at the kids ahead of him. "Nope, that's still them. I don't know what they're up to, but get ready for anything." The team started leading them towards the edge of the cliff, and before they knew it, they were racing out the front gate. The Chunin on guard had yelled at them as they passed, but they paid him no mind. They raced into the woods, and Pakun was growing more and more suspicious. Just what did they think they were up to? Finally, they stopped and turned towards the pack. Pakun barked once, and they all came to a halt. What did they think they were doing? They were panting heavily as they stared at the dogs 10 feet away from them. Naruto flashed them a grin as he reached into his bag. "It's been a blast, guys, but we'll see you later." Hinata and Sasuke grabbed a hold of his shoulders, and all three disappeared in a flash of light. The dogs simply stared at the lingering glimmer. So, he actually did it, Pakun thought. The kid really learned the Flying Thunder God technique. Still, he knew that the blonde would need a marker, which meant it would have to be somewhere along the way they had came. Then, the realization hit him. The storm of clones had been a distraction for a single clone to get away with the marker. There's no way of telling which direction he could have gone. Pakun would have chuckled if he wasn't so frustrated. The kids weren't the only ones who were tired. He turned back to the pack and said, "Alright, we have a lot of ground to cover. We're splitting up to find them. They have to be somewhere in the village. We'd better start looking." A single clone stood in the middle of the woods, holding the three-pronged kunai as he waited for the return of the original. There was a bright flash, and suddenly all three genin materialized before him. Sasuke staggered as he tried to orient himself. The clone reached out and helped the blonde as he fell on his hands and knees and began violently throwing up. Hinata rubbed his back as he repeatedly regurgitated his stomach. When she started to notice blood mixed in, she began to worry. Finally, his convulsions stopped and he began to breathe normally. "Are you okay?" No. That was the worst it has ever been," Naruto uttered as he clenched the grass in his fists. He was shaking as Hinata helped him up. Naruto turned up to his clone and tried to offer him a smile. "Thanks, me. Anytime, boss." He smirked before he puffed away. Hinata started to carry him and was surprised when Sasuke grabbed his other arm. He didn't say anything, and the three of them started heading off through the woods. After a while, Sasuke turned to him and smirked. "Like I said before, Dope, it's a little creepy to talk to yourself, especially when something talks back." "Shut up," he muttered weakly. He felt as if a hole had been torn in his stomach. He felt his body heating up as the pain started to ever so slowly edge away. "Naruto, these effects can't be normal. You need to see a doctor about this," Hinata chimed in. "Nah, I'll be right as rain in a few hours. I just don't know what the problem is, Hinata." She wanted to press the issue, but Sasuke cut in. "Where the hell did you even learn that jutsu in the first place?" Sasuke asked. Even through his exhaustion, Naruto was still anxious about revealing the origin of his secret technique. "Why do you want to know?" "I'm just curious. That's a complicated technique, and I'm certain the fourth Hokage didn't come back from the dead to teach you." Naruto was stunned as he and Hinata stared at Sasuke. He was silent before he asked, "How long have you known?" "It came to me after I was thinking about our last mission. Wasn't that hard to put two and two together. The yellow flash really gives it away. Sorry for not talking about it." "Don't be. I didn't bring it up to you, so there's no reason for you to feel sorry. The only thing you need to worry about is fixing that dang problem. Honestly, you'd be the strongest genin in the village if you could figure that out." "I would be?" He smirked at him. "Not there yet, Seal Master. You might be faster than me, but you're still not quite at my level." Sasuke smirked at him. Naruto was surprised before smiling, and they continued on a steady pace. They had done it. They had gotten away, and they were probably going to stay hidden for the rest of the day. They knew that the dogs could easily sniff them out if they stayed in the village, so there were only a few spots they could go. They had to go somewhere the pack wouldn't expect, and that already had their scent. He almost smiled as they entered the clearing of Training Ground 7. They meandered their way over to the training posts as they lay Naruto against them. They found themselves taking spots sitting right next to him. Naruto closed his eyes and smiled. "I don't think we need to worry about them for a while." "What did I tell you about jinxing us?" Sasuke lightly reprimanded. "Come on, a true ninja never believes in superstitions," he chuckled. Coming from the guy scared of ghosts, he smirked back. If he hadn't been so tired, he would have jumped up. I don't know what you're talking about," he exclaimed. Hinata lightly giggled, and Sasuke smirked as he closed his eyes and leaned against the pole. A pleasant quietness fell over them as they each got comfortable against the pole. They leaned against him, and the warmth from their bodies filled him with a feeling that he had never really felt before. Soon enough, they started to drift asleep one by one. Although he was the most tired, Naruto was the last one to kneel to slumber. Before he drifted off, he glanced between the people leaning against his sides. His eyes flustered, and he had one last thought before sleep claimed him. If this feeling was what being on a team was like, this feeling of belonging, it was more than he had ever hoped for. Kakashi watched from the trees as the final head bobbed down. He made 4 hand seals and lightly pressed the ground, revealing Paku. "Kakashi, what's up? We were in the middle of our search." "I can see that," he said as he pointed at the sleeping genin. "Oh," he whispered as he spied on them. "I'd rather not disturb them." "Neither would I. They have done some good work in the last few days. They deserve a break. Tell the others to call off their search. I think they're done for the day." "You really care for these kids." "You can be soft, Kakashi." "Maybe." "Alright then, I'll tell them. But before I go..." He trotted out into the field towards the sleeping genin. He quietly crept up and lightly gnawed on Naruto's sandal before triumphantly trotting back to Sasuke. He smugly looked at Kakashi and said, "Now I get the steak for dinner." Kakashi chuckled and scratched behind his ears. "I guess you do. Get going. I'll see you at home." Paku nodded and set out as Kakashi stared at his team enjoying a blissful sleep. Sensei would have been proud. Chapter 17. Private Sessions. 3 years ago. "Ria? Ria? Where are you?" A woman's voice cried out, echoing over the rolling hills of tall grass. Her eyes danced frantically across the horizon, until a small head perked over the grass. Relief flooded the woman's chest as she ran over and grasped the little girl in her arms. "There you are! What have I told you about going off on your own?" her mother chided. The little girl seemed embarrassed as she clutched a small toy bear to her chest. Her little expedition had been cut off far too soon in her opinion. The ever-oppressive rain had finally let off for a few minutes, and she wanted to make the most of it. She was tired of being in that tiny wagon for so long. She wanted to spread her legs and play. She mumbled something under her breath, causing her mother to pull back. "What was that, sweetie?" she gently prodded. "I don't like it here. How much longer until we get to leave this place?" Her mother gave her a sad smile as she brushed a stray hair from Ria's forehead. It came to no surprise to hear that the kids were feeling pent up inside the carriage. They had been traveling for 3 weeks now, the last 2 of which were spent under the oppressive weather of Rain Country. "Hey, I know it's been hard for you and your brothers. I'm sure this trip hasn't exactly been fun for you all, but I promise that the worst is almost behind us. We're almost to the land of rivers, and then we'll be out of this nasty rain. It will probably just be about 3 more days of travel." This didn't seem to satisfy the young pouting girl, who only seemed to focus on the more travel part. She stubbornly clutched the teddy bear close to her chest and avoided her mother's eyes. "Come on." The mother smiled sweetly as she gently lifted her daughter's chin up to look her in the eyes. "I need your help to keep your brothers in good spirits too. I'm sure they're feeling the same way as you do. So let's try to do something together to lift everyone's spirits. What do you say?" The little girl kept her tight grip on her toy, but she eventually nodded and said, "Okay. I'm sorry for running off without telling you." "It's okay, sweetie. Now come along. The rain could start up any minute, and we don't want you catching a cold," she replied as she offered her hand. The little girl nodded, and the 2 of them began heading back to the caravan. They had been traveling for weeks now. And while the mother was glad that her daughter had a chance to stretch her legs, it was also very dangerous for her to go off on her own. "Mommy, where exactly are we going?" Her mother tightened her grip on her daughter's hand as she smiled down at her. "We're going to visit some very special people who your father hasn't seen in a long time. He's very excited to introduce you to them." "Who are they?" Rhea responded, voice brimming with curiosity. This was the first time her mother had actually budged when she asked about their surprise trip. "Well, that's part of the surprise, but rest assured, they are going to be more than thrilled to meet you." She was cut off as a ball of fire erupted from the campsite in the distance. Rhea let out a shrill scream as her mother's calm and collected face shifted into one completely on guard. "Mommy, what's going on?" Rhea frantically asked, tugging on her mother's arm. Her mother made no reply as her eyes scanned the area around her. Suddenly, the woman scooped up her daughter so fast that she dropped her stuffed animal. "Teddy!" The little girl screamed as she grasped towards her dropped toy. "Shh, honey, I need you to be quiet. It's very important." "But—" "Not another word." The little girl was immediately silent as her mother shot her a look she had never seen before. Her mother raced off towards the campsite, and the little girl started to tear up as her precious companion was left behind in the mud. In the tall grass, several eyes stared at their retreating forms and began swiftly following them. One set, however, did not give chase. The last person casually walked forward and stared down at the mud-caked form of the stuffed animal. Raising his finger in a hand sign, the world melted away, revealing Kitsune standing in front of a pile of mud. He pocketed the wooden totem in his hand as he reached into the mud and pulled out an object. He delicately tried to scrape away the mud and grime, and let the rain wash away the years of accumulated filth to reveal a pair of glass eyes staring back at him. To think it had sat there for 3 years waiting for its master's return. The thing was so tattered. It was surprising the thing hadn't fallen apart. He was silent as he stored away the tiny creature into the sealing scroll on his forearm. This was his first stop on his mission. He gazed along the barren fields of rain country as his eyes settled on a dark silhouette in the distance. He raced over and found the charred remains of a wagon. The vehicle was half submerged in mud and covered in moss. The wheels were broken, and there were several holes torn through the drenched canvas. He looked inside the wreckage and gazed upon what was left of the vehicle. Any documents or luggage that had been aboard had long been scavenged by the occupants of the area. All that was left was a lone body lying against the canvas. Kitsune stepped forward and yanked the kunai lodged deep into the man's skull. He assumed it was a man based on the skeleton's build and clothes. After a quick prayer, Kitsune was sure to seal away the man's remains as well. His master had always taught him to respect the dead of innocent civilians, and offer a short prayer when possible. After 20 minutes, he was comfortable he had found everything he could at this location. Any evidence in the terrain, such as explosion residue, was certain to have been washed away by the weather. Taking one last glance to ensure he was alone, he pulled out his wooden totem and began reforming the jutsu. The world seemed to contort as Kitsune stood in the middle of a raging battleground as steel clashed and shinobi were locked in combat. The wagon was upright again, and he watched as a kunai prepped the canvas, and he heard a gurgled gasp come from inside. His eyes settled on the woman from before as she drove a kunai through the throat of an approaching man. Kitsune was frustrated that he could not recognize the headband from his point of view. The body flopped to the ground, and the young girl whimpered at the sight as she clutched her mother's legs. "Fasuchi!" a man's voice rang out. A larger-built man ran up to them and embraced who he assumed was his wife in a short hug. Before he swept up the girl, a larger-built man ran up to them and embraced who he assumed was his wife in a short hug before he swept up the young girl in his arms. "Are you two all right?" "Yes, we're fine, but what about the boys?" "Raitsu has them. Come on, my men will hold them off. We need to leave." The two raced away as more dark forms converged on the scene and chased after them. Some were intercepted by the father's men, but some managed to break through. Kitsune creased his brow as the vision blurred and became dark. He released his jutsu and cursed. He supposed a child's memory could only remember so much. He stared off in the direction they had left and pocketed his totem. Without another word, he set off in the direction of the Land of Rivers. Kakashi stared out across the water as Hinata helped the two boys struggle to keep their balance. It had been several days, but they had finally managed to do it. All three of them were able to stay afloat on the water by themselves. Sure, the boys didn't have it down perfectly, but he had given them enough time on this. It was time to move forward. All right, bring it in. The three wobbled their way across the water and met him on shore. Hinata was still blushing up a storm at the sight of the shirtless boys. They had followed her example and started showing up for practice with bathing suits for the exercise. It was all she could do to not form a nosebleed. After all of the hard work Kakashi had been putting them through, the boys were certainly well developed for their age. Great job. For now, I think that will be enough. You have each demonstrated that you are capable of the exercise, so you have earned the right to move on to your individual lessons. Each of them gleamed and smiled at the prospect. Each of them was excited to actually get personal training from their teacher. After all, they had seen what he was capable of when he took a Jonin down in one move. After they had changed and returned to him, Kakashi crossed his fingers and two clones sprung to life next to him. Alright, each of these clones will be helping you with your routine today. Try not to pop them, for I don't have enough chakra to keep sending them out if you do. The two clones directed Sasuke and Hinata away as the original stared down Naruto, who was bouncing on his feet. So what are we gonna do, sensei? What awesome techniques are we gonna work with? His mind swirled with an image of himself shooting off tendrils of lightning, with one foot planted on the backside of Sasuke. None. What? He sputtered as he face planted. What did you say? You heard me. I'm not going to be teaching you some awesome techniques as you phrased it. At least, not yet anyway. Instead, we are going to be forced to do some remedial work. He hardened his gaze as he stared at the boy. I'm sure Sasuke and Iruka have pointed it out to you. You may be fast, but that doesn't make up for the fact that you are severely lacking in the taijutsu department. Naruto clenched his teeth as he stared at the ground. It wasn't like it was his fault. I know that some of the teachers in the academy were less than helpful when it came to your education, but there's nothing we can do about that now. All we can do is fix up what they failed to teach you and press ahead. Naruto clenched his fist as he stared at the ground. Dang teachers. Because of them, he was going to be behind Sasuke and Hinata, just because of their stupid prejudice. Now don't look so down. I didn't say that was all we'd be doing. As he noticed Naruto's dark change in attitude, Naruto looked up at him curiously as he continued. Thankfully for you, your little incident with Mizuki and the Nidame scroll turned out to be a blessing in disguise in more ways than one. Tell me, have you noticed the little trick that your shadow clones grant you? Naruto only stared at him blankly. I guess not, Kakashi sighed. Have you noticed how their memories seem to transfer back to you after they dispel? Feelings of the sharp teeth sinking into him raced back into his mind. Oh, yeah, like when your rabid mutts were chasing us? Or when you passed out from exhaustion from working all day at the lumberyard? Kakashi finished. Everything your clones do will be sent back to you, exhaustion included. This is helpful for us, since we can cover a lot of ground at once by having them practice with you. Meaning I get more training done at once, Naruto realized as his eyes lit up. Wow, sensei, you're some kind of genius. I've been called that from time to time, he chuckled. Anyways, like I said, your taijutsu is not all we will be working on. While I did pick up a thing or two from my sensei, I will admit that you are further along with sealing than I probably will ever be. I understand you were just starting your advanced series, correct? After he gave him a proud nod, he continued. While we work on your training, I want you to leave a clone dedicated to reading through the advanced set. I know I haven't given you guys a lot of free time lately, and don't think I haven't noticed how tired you are in the morning. You've been staying up after training reading, haven't you? Knowing he had been caught, Naruto rubbed his head in embarrassment. I don't think I need to tell you that you need as much sleep as you can get. From now on, only read during our individual sessions and on Sunday. I know your education is important to you, but you need to stay healthy, or your exhaustion will catch up with you. Naruto nodded furiously as he understood the message. Moving on, aside from that, we will work on getting the jutsu already under your belt to the next level. I assume the Fox Hellfire was not the only technique Kitsune taught you, correct? After a nod, Kakashi started smiling. Good. Then show me. At the same time, the clone Kakashi stared down at Sasuke. Out of the three of them, he was the most anxious to learn. What troubled Kakashi was just how anxious he was. He wanted to progress quickly, but would get frustrated if anything took a long time to learn. He needed to focus on curbing that ego, but that also could backfire on him. He needed to find a nice medium of challenge. So, he reached into the bag he had brought and tossed Sasuke a bokken. Sasuke rubbed his hand along the wooden blade as he shot Kakashi a surprised look. Kenjutsu? I'll admit, your abilities in ninjutsu and taijutsu are already at Chunin level. Once you activate your Sharingan, it will be all the more easier for you to advance faster. You'll be able to copy any ninjutsu and most taijutsu forms instantly. The area we should really be working on is your chakra levels, chakra control, and stamina. But something tells me you wouldn't be too happy about that. Sasuke frowned as he stared at the man, but stayed silent. He wasn't wrong. You hate repetition in training that doesn't reward direct results. If I were to just focus on those while I helped your teammate, you'd be even grumpier than normal. I think Kenjutsu is a happy medium. It's not something you can just copy with your Sharingan once you have it, and it can be quite a soothing experience. Besides, I'll throw in a few Raiton Jutsu for you to learn into the mix to shake things up. Sound like a plan? Sasuke stared down at the wooden blade as he spun it around. He couldn't deny he liked the sound of that. He nodded as he stared back at his sensei and gripped the handle in his hands. He seemed to pause as a question popped in his mind. Actually, sensei, there is something that has been bothering me. Kakashi patiently waited for him to continue. If he was finally opening up, he wanted him to do it at his own pace. I've come to realize a problem I have, and I don't know how to fix it. It seemed to really be bugging him, for he had said the last few words through clenched teeth. Go on. I've realized a flaw that I have, and I'm not too proud of, he clenched out. Kakashi couldn't help himself. Oh, has my little student finally discovered the wonders of the female anatomy? I guess it's to be expected with Hinata drenched in water every day. It's perfectly normal for a boy your age. Sasuke sent him a glare through crimson cheeks, and Kakashi just chuckled. I'm kidding. What's really on your mind? I've realized I can lose my cool a little too quickly, especially when thinking about a certain matter. Ah, so that's what this is about. You can't stop thinking about that day, can you? Sasuke's tightened grip on the handle was all the answer he needed. Speaking from personal experience, I know what it's like to lose everyone you care about. Sasuke was surprised as he stared back at him. Kakashi motioned him to sit, and he joined him on the soft grass. I've been around a lot longer than you have, and I know what it's like having everyone you love disappear. Friends, lovers, teachers, family. I've been through it all. How do you deal with it? Does the pain ever go away? No, it never will. If you try to be by yourself and push others away, it only makes things worse. Like I'm sure you have, I threw myself in training and work. I joined Anbu and went on mission after mission just to keep my head clear. But that never works. Eventually, it all comes back to haunt you. Sasuke stared down at the ground as he gripped the wooden handle in his hand. That's not to say it can't get better. Even after pushing them away, I had friends who stuck by me and helped me from drowning in my own misery. You'll probably meet some of them sometime. But I warn you, one in particular can be quite the character," he said as thoughts of green spandex burst into his mind. Sasuke was quiet as the memory of his teammates trying to help him a few nights ago came to his mind. "I assume you brought this up because it was affecting your attempts at tree climbing." "How did you know that?" He shrugged. "I could tell you were having a hard time clearing your head. If I had to bet, the reason you're bringing this up is because you've noticed your thoughts are making it harder for you to focus your chakra. Am I wrong?" Sasuke's silence was all the answer he needed. Meditation and training doesn't work. Believe me, I've tried, and I bet you have as well. I'd advise finding a hobby that puts you at ease. Whenever these thoughts return, just focus on your hobby. What did you do to overcome it? Kakashi actually scratched his head and seemed embarrassed. "Well, that's more of a story for another time. But let's just say I haven't exactly followed the most helpful example. To keep it brief, let's say I'm emulating someone I cared about, and not exactly all of his attributes can be considered positive." The image of the man's orange book made Sasuke frown and stare disapprovingly at his sensei. "I'm not going to get over my problems with smut, you pervert." "Nor should you. A healthier example is probably how I raised my Ninken. They were a positive support that allowed me to reach out to others, as well as further my ability on the battlefield. What you eventually decide is up to you." "I don't know what I like to do," he quietly muttered. "I thought so. Take some time next weekend to go out in the village and explore. Try to make a friend or two. Look for new activities that pique your interest. It doesn't have to be much, but at least give it a shot." Sasuke nodded as he thought over it. "I'll try." Kakashi grinned as he stood up. "That's all I can ask. Now, if that's all, are you ready to get started?" Sasuke smirked and gripped the wooden blade in both hands. "Ready whenever you are, Edo-sensei." He got a whack in the head for his comment, and Kakashi began working through the first kata his own father had taught him many years ago. The other clones stared down at Hinata as she anxiously waited for him to begin. "What are we going to focus on, sensei?" "Before we begin, I want to get something through your head. You are not behind as you seem to think you are." Hinata was surprised by his blunt comment. "What are you talking about, sensei?" This conversation had been a long time coming. He had wanted to have this conversation day one, but the discovery of Naruto's Hiraishin and her positive interaction with the boys had held him up. It was finally time to break through the shell she had enveloped herself in. "I can't read minds, but I can tell what you are thinking. You seem to think you are behind the others." She yanked at her jacket as she stared down at the ground. "But it's true. They're both so gifted." "Yes, they can be labeled as prodigies in one area or another. But why do you think that doesn't apply to you?" Thoughts of her cousin raced through her mind as she stared at the ground. "I'm no prodigy. I'm not that special when compared to them, or even my own clan." "What gives you that idea?" "I just know it." Her clan was always ready to remind her of that. She was always ridiculed when compared to the shining abilities of her younger sister or cousin. "I want you to listen, and listen well. I don't give a crap what the Hyuga elders think of you." She was shocked and started to stutter. But Kakashi cut her off. "They must be as blind as they are old. What I see when I look at you is a determined young lady who has already proved herself as an excellent kunoichi. You have already proved them wrong, time and time again. You were the one that was accepted for your summoning contract, and you were the one that the stone monument responded to." Her eyes were cut off by a loud gasp. How do you... "The Hokage filled me in on the situation. I don't know everything that is going on, but I know you are in for a lot sooner or later. I want to make sure that you know that you are worth more than you think you are. I don't know what the future holds for you, but I want you to know that I believe you can handle it. And I'm sure your teammates think so too." Tears streamed from her face as she launched herself onto Kakashi's chest. He rubbed her back and soothed her as she cried into his chest. His eyebrows narrowed as he held her. How long had it been since someone sat down and told her they believed in her? After several minutes, she finally calmed down and let go. She sniffled as she wiped away her tears. Sorry. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. That means a lot. I meant it. You are truly special. And they are fools for believing otherwise. While you might not think so, you are just as extraordinary as either of your teammates. Not many people your age can just develop their own techniques. Or did you think that was something people did all the time? No, but... Hinata. I can only think of one other person who managed to create their own original technique by your age. And you're staring at him. Maybe you're not as gifted in your clan's taijutsu as your clan wants you to be. But so what? Some taijutsu styles are not for everyone. If it doesn't work for you, find something else. The thought shocked her to her core. The idea of the Gyuukin being wrong contradicted everything she had ever been taught as a child. But my father... Your father's not here. You are my soldier, and you shall learn what I see fit. Understand? She wiped away the last of her tears and stared at him with renewed determination. Good. Now this will not be easy, but I can already tell you what you need to focus on. For years, I have been irritated how the Hyuga never seemed to grasp the concept to develop some long-distance techniques. Sure, they have their air palm technique, but that is extremely limited. I plan to teach you some Suiton Jutsu to fix this problem. This could also help her with her taijutsu problem as well, Kakashi thought to himself. He could tell that the Gyuukin form she was using was too rigid for her style. When she fought, she was graceful and moved like water in and out from her opponent's attacks. He wouldn't be surprised if it turned out to be her chakra affinity. Learning some Suiton Jutsu could help her in the long run of altering her form, but they didn't have time for that before they returned to missions. So, our game plan is working on increasing your chakra capacity, learning some new medical techniques, and working on your own developed jutsus. Sound good? She nodded her head and straightened her back as she stared at him. She had made great strides over the 2 months with the boys, but she had still been lingering in that shell of hers. Maybe she would never be free of it, but he would try his best to crack through it. Good. Now I made a promise when we first started our new training regiment, and I plan to stick to it. Turn on your Byakugan and watch closely. He began to concentrate, and his hands began to become enveloped by a green light. She stared curiously as the chakra concentrated in his hands, but it did not seem agitated like most techniques. It seemed calming and smooth for some reason. I copied this technique a long time ago for emergency treatment on the battlefield. I'm no medic, so this was mostly for spot and go injuries. I'm sure a proper mednin will be able to help you with this in time. But for now, this will help you with healing tiny injuries. Your chakra control is already at a point where this won't be too difficult for you. Are you ready? She nodded as she closed her eyes and started concentrating on forming her chakra the same way he had. Before they truly got started, he could not help but make a final jab at her. We both know how much trouble Naruto gets himself in. This way, you can get him shirtless as much as you want to heal all those nasty scars. Her concentration dissipated in an instant as a blush furiously etched across her face. He chuckled and rubbed her hair as she tried to pull herself deeper into her jacket. He was actually starting to like these kids. The Hokage watched with his crystal ball as Kakashi began to crack down on all of his pupils. He was glad the man was opening up again. Each of his genin was bringing out a different side of him. Naruto was allowing him to settle the ghosts of his past. Hinata was allowing him to become the father figure that he had been absent in his own life, and Sasuke allowed him to reconcile for his own mistakes in dealing with his trauma. It was for this reason that he had paired him up with Sasuke. The two shared so much in common that it would do the boy good to have a role model that had been in his shoes. They were making good progress, and he actually believed they would be ready for the slew of assignments he had already had for them once the allotted time had passed. He carefully sat the ball back behind his desk before he returned to two papers that held most of his attention. The first was a letter that needed to be handled with extreme care. For years now, Kitty had been swamped in a seemingly unending civil war over the extermination of blood limit users. Over the past few months, the rebel forces had faced some serious losses and were now on the defensive as the loyalists pushed in on them. The young leader of the rebel movement had sent them a letter requesting for aid in their endeavor. His heart went out to their plea, especially due to the number of blood limit users the Leaf Village housed. But he didn't need Donzo to help make his decision any easier. He had to decline their request for aid. Even if he agreed with their cause, it would not do for the village to side with the losing faction of another country's war. Unless they were able to gain the upper hand and truly start making some ground, he was afraid they were on their own. He hoped they could hold out for a couple of years and start pushing back, but it was wishful thinking. The other was a mission he had assigned to Kitsune. 3 years ago, a patrol had come across a young family wandering in the forests along the border of the river and fire country. They had gone through some severe trauma, and their family had apparently been slaughtered by enemy shinobi. When arriving at the site of the attack, the field was littered with the remains of a battle. But there were no bodies or any evidence to help link back to their attackers. The young family was relocated to the village, and the case was sadly considered dead. Without any leads, they couldn't do anything. That was until a recent blood test came back that had gravely concerned him. He had immediately reopened the case and ordered Kitsune to follow through with it. The context of the attack was now much more concerning. If his suspicions were correct, he would be facing an internal and international incident that the elemental nations had not been through before. Keke Tota did not just appear out of nowhere.